Hey guys, welcome to our AMA with Justin Maris. Justin's a friend of mine. We met at 500. Most of you probably know him for being the co-author of Traction, which is the book where the bullseye framework is popularized, and that's one of the sections that we're working on this week. Justin's done a lot of other things other than that. Right now, he's running Kettle and Fire, which is the leading bone broth supplier. I'll let him talk about that, and he has a new software tool that he just picked up, a very interesting acquisition story called FOMO. So Justin, why don't you want to give yourself a little bit of a background so people know who you are and some of the new stuff you're working on?
Totally. Yeah. So basically, I used to run growth, which is like marketing, sales, all of that, at a company called Exceptional Cloud Services. We got acquired in 2013 by Rackspace. And then most recently now, I co-authored Traction. And then now I'm running a company called Kettle and Fire. We have a bone broth product that, basically it was a product that I wanted. I tested it on the side, thought it would be a nice side business, and it kind of took off on me. And so now doing a bone broth company. And then most recently, I guess this was 6 months ago now, my business partner and I bought a software as a service tool called Notify, and now called FOMO, that helps you improve conversion rates on your site. So if you've ever been to booking.com, hotels.com, something like that, and you've seen one of those little, 10 people book this room in the last hour or whatever, FOMO does that as a service. And so it makes it really easy. Yay. So it makes it really easy for any website to install it, one line of code, and then improve their conversion rates. And so that's taking up all of my time right now.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome. And then you also have a course too. Do you want to talk about that, marketing, programming for marketers?
Yeah. So I also made a free email course and there's a paid video course component as well called Programming for Marketers with my partner, Nat. It basically teaches you how to become what we call a technical marketer. It teaches you just enough of Python, scraping, HTML, CSS, SQL, how to use the terminal to become a technical marketer so that you can actually get things done as a marketer as opposed to waiting on developers, which is a problem a lot of marketers, including myself, had for quite a long time.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, perfect. Well, hey, I thought it would be, I have a list of questions from the audience. As people have questions, if you want to just write them in the chat and then I'll moderate those out. But I thought it would be helpful to, since the lesson that we're doing that was released on Sunday is about early traction. So essentially finding product market fit and then moving into early acquisition bullseye. I thought it would be helpful for Justin and I to kind of talk through some of the different channels in bullseye that we've been using specifically for different projects, and other people can jump in too, of course. But to kick that off, Justin, do you want to just talk a little bit about what the motivation behind bullseye was and just give a very high level overview of that, and then we can kind of go channel by channel quickly?
Mm-hmm. For sure. So we basically, we took a look at kind of the startup ecosystem when we started writing the book and saw that the biggest issue with a lot of startups and why they were failing was not necessarily because they couldn't build a product that worked or that was great or whatever. It was because they didn't have a systematic way to approach the problem of getting traction, And so that's what we tried to solve with Bullseye. Is give someone a framework where they can go, okay, I'm going to go through this approach. And by the end of that, I will have some marketing strategy that is better than what I have now, AKA throwing shit at the wall, trying random things in an unstructured, unsystematic way. And so that's what we tried to solve for by introducing the Bullseye framework and the whole approach that we outline in Traction. Sweet.
Okay, great. So, of course, every business that you run is going to have different. You're going to want to try different channels, and so stuff that we're going to talk about today is not going to necessarily work for everybody. The way that I like to break it down, first of all, when trying to pick the initial channels, is essentially do you have to meet demand? Are people already looking for what you're doing, or do you have to actually create the demand and generate it yourself? So let's I guess first of all, if we look at some of the first channels, existing platforms is an interesting one because that's always changing. And are there any, like when I think of like existing platforms that I like to use, like I think of like Quora. I also think about like Facebook, like Facebook groups. What are your, like, what is your definition of existing platforms? And like, do you have any examples of like ways or strategies that you could employ? Like if you're thinking of like maybe like growing FOMO or Kettle on Fire, what would you look at there?
Yeah, what would I look at in terms of existing channels? I mean,
like existing platforms.
Yeah. So yeah, sorry, existing platforms. So the biggest thing there is look at where demand is already, or transactions are already happening.
Okay.
Think about how can you get a piece of that, gain that, whatever it is. So for us, and then so for us, what that meant is looking at places where people were already buying food online. So Amazon, Thrive Market, some of these health, Lucky Vitamin, VitaCost, like all of these kind of health focused websites were already existing platforms where they already sold product that to healthy people, health centric people. They already had an audience of people that were ready to buy. And so if we could just get in the middle of that transaction, we would pick up, we would move more product. And so that's what I mean by looking at existing platforms is how can you get onto platforms where the transactions that you want to be a part of, or when the audience that you want to reach is already there. Like, and how can you game that? Like we did this with programming for marketers with Udemy, where a bunch of people that buy courses are on Udemy. And so when we made a course, it was like, okay, let's put part of this on Udemy so that we get more, more exposure, more bigger audience, all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, cool. So like that's, yeah, okay, so that's fascinating. So for bone broth example, like is Amazon or some health food stores that people were already buying healthy products, so you don't have to go out and educate them. They already knew what they wanted. You could just fit it into their pipeline.
Exactly.
For FOMO, that might be something like Shopify, right?
Yep.
100%. And for courses, it might be something like Udemy. So yeah, I feel like this is something that, I mean, at least myself as a founder and a marketer forget a lot of times is like, there is oftentimes an easy route. Like and I think Justin's probably a master of this too, is like finding like easy, like picking the lowest hanging fruit first. Whereas sometimes we think things are too challenging. We're like, oh, well, like, I'm selling, I'm selling a new course. I'm going to go find people who want, this course, and I'm going to, run a bunch of ad campaigns and do all that stuff. When there are people that might be searching for it at some place. What is one of the questions at a high level before going through all the other things is like, presumably all of these channels could work for your business, right? So you go around this circle and you write down a couple strategies for each one of these channels. Now, how do you deal with nixing channels and picking the right ones? Is there some sort of like scientific formula that you use, or is it kind of just all gut? Do you sometimes have 5 that you pick in the middle circle? Do you sometimes have 7? How religious are you with this?
Yeah, so I think it's useful. This is where I think benchmarking and creating a hypothesis is useful, because you can say, okay, I think that given X, Y, and Z, let's say SEO is a channel you wanted to test. You could say, I think given X, Y, and Z search traffic, if we do these things, it should take us roughly this long to rank, because I've talked to this person in the industry and like that's how long it took them in a similarly competitive space, whatever. And so I would then invest in SEO and see like, oh man, if our stuff is way behind, or if we see people are clicking our site and we're ranking better but no one's converting, then maybe you kind of reconsider things. And I would do that based on a hypothesis where you'd say, okay, I think we can get to this number. That number that you're coming up with is generally a combination, or it generally comes from a combination of your own experience, what you've seen in the past, as well as talking to other people, maybe some industry benchmarks. For example, if you had a churn hypothesis, like a pretty well-known churn benchmark is just like get below 5% a month. You know what I mean? And so for that, then you say, okay, here's this benchmark. How badly did we miss this? Like if you tested a channel and you missed it by a factor of 10, maybe there's some lower hanging fruit out there that it would make sense to invest in otherwise. Like to give you an example, a real example with Kettle on Fire is we saw one thing that was working was video. And so we made a video about like how to make bone broth. It's a tasty video. It's nice. And started promoting it, and just like nothing happened. And so we thought that this was going to get 10,000 views given the resources we put into it. Got not even close to that. So we were like, okay, maybe video is just not a good channel for us. And now we're looking at other things.
Okay, got it. It seems like some of the things are just table stakes though. So like, how do you handle that? Like, so for example, like SEO, there's a difference between having SEO as a full-fledged focused acquisition channel, and also just like doing things periodically that are going to help improve your SEO over time that you should be doing in general. Can you explain the difference between like what are a couple of things that you should just like be karate kidding, like wax on, wax off, like some of the technical SEO stuff, maybe some of the content marketing, versus actually having it be like an exploited channel? I guess the real question there, that was a long-winded question. The real question is, what type of effort, what's the difference between like just what type of effort do you put into these three channels or this one channel? It's like 100% focus?
Yeah. So I think there's kind of a 80-20 rule of like, spend most of your time on stuff that's already working, assuming you've identified a channel, 20% like testing a new channel. And which, now that I meant to say that out loud, like that is not the Pareto principle at all. That's not the real 80-20 rule, but I think there's an 80-20 split, like 4 days a week on stuff that's working, 1 day a week on stuff that you're testing that could work really well. And I actually think that a lot of startups and a lot of companies in general tend to waste their time. Like if you're not going to make content marketing a channel and you're not going to make SEO a channel, hire someone to like fix your technical SEO and then don't worry about it. Or like don't write any blog posts if it's not going to be a channel for you. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't do anyone any good if you're publishing one post every like 3 weeks, really intermittently, no email captures, you're not writing about anything interesting. It's just like, why even bother? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could not agree more. That especially, so the content lesson that's coming up next Monday too has some really good stuff about how content is not just necessarily about creating content. It's actually all about distribution, and that takes like 90% of the time.
Yep.
So you're not going to have the time to actually distribute the content. And a lot of the content that gets created isn't actually original content. A lot of it's actually just repurposing content and combining content that has worked for other people into your own form. So we'll talk about all of that. But yeah, I think that's a great thing. Like, that's great advice. Early channels, everybody. So speaking of like SEO, right? Like SEO is very sexy. Everybody's always like, oh, we need to do SEO. We need to do this SEO thing. I have like real estate guys that come to me all the time. They're like, oh, you're in growth. I need to do this SEO thing. So there's some other like unsexy channels that work really well for very early stage startups that are like just getting started. What are some of your, in your experience with some of the stuff that you've done, what are some of like the channels that you've liked to explore like early on that have worked well for you?
Early on, good question. I think truthfully one of the biggest ones is existing platforms. I think it's so easy, and I think that you can figure out like pretty quickly what works on this platform and how can I get a piece of what's going on here. I think that's really easy. And then the other piece I think is truthfully building relationships with people in a space, and then just having them help out with whatever you're doing. And so for me, when we launched FOMO, for example, I know a bunch of people in growth. And so I launched FOMO, emailed like 70 people once we went live on Product Hunt, including you, I think. It was just like, hey, we just put FOMO on Product Hunt. Can you upvote it? Or, hey, I just launched this thing. Would you mind tweeting about it? And collectively, we reached tens of thousands of people on FOMO launch day just from me asking my friends to share it with their audience. Because it was a marketing tool that I have a lot of friends in marketing,
Yeah.
So honestly, I think that people overcomplicate the first, especially the early days. A lot of times it's just hitting up your network, building relationships, and then getting them to promote it just a little bit here and there,
So where would you put personal network in the Bullseye framework? Would that be under some sort of community building or? Yeah,
probably. Yeah, likely community building, or almost like ED partnerships in a way.
Yeah. So I was going to say that I feel like in the early days, everything that has worked for me has largely been around email outreach. And that outreach can be to my friends. That's done in kind of a systematic way. A systematic way of spamming my friends. Or it can be to people who I have identified as targets. And we'll talk about all that in the outreach stuff. But are you guys, with FOMO, I imagine you guys are doing email outreach to people who you believe would be good customers, like websites that you'd want to have your tool installed on. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we plan on that. So far, the product has been a little behind.
So it's
so we've been focusing on integrations first, but yes.
Okay, and so integrations essentially would be existing platforms for you for that.
Yes, exactly.
So from a consumer standpoint, though, email can still be a channel. Like for Kettle and Fire, did you guys use email as a channel to get your early, like, did you email like influencers, or did you do outreach, or did you find people who were already, how did you use email with Kettle and Fire, or did you use email as a channel early on with Kettle and Fire to help grow it?
Yeah, we did. So, excuse me. We did. So we basically did a ton of outreach to different people that have health products or, have a big paleo influencer audience. And so that was like a really, really big focus for us. And that was a combination of introductions and just us doing outbound and saying, hey, we'll pay you X, Y, or Z if you promote our thing. Here's what we're doing. Would love to chat. And that worked really, really well. It takes a while. You have to, it's not crazy scalable right away, but it works really well. And especially in the early days when you're just like, how do I get that first little bit of traction? It can be really, really useful to just assume that nothing you're going to do is scalable and just like email people all day. Like that is probably better than what a lot of founders spend time working on in terms of blog posts, whatever.
Yeah, totally. It's hard to keep track of, but so you also talk about engineering as marketing as a channel. Can you give some examples of that, or can you speak to engineering as marketing a little bit to the audience?
Yeah. So, man, this is one of my favorites. So there's a ton. So basically engineering as marketing is using your engineering resources or any other limited resource to grow better and faster. And so you've seen HubSpot do an incredible job of this. You've seen companies like RunScope do an incredible job of this, where they basically will say, I am going to build like Website Grader in the case of HubSpot, a free tool where you go online, you submit your URL, you get an email, you submit your email address, and they email you back and say like, here's your grade on this website. Here's what you could improve. Here's what you're doing well. Here's what you're not. And that one tool alone generates something like 40,000 leads a month for them. It's insane. And so I think that people should start thinking about this, of what small free tools or what useful things can I build for the community that I'm in to attract attention. And this in Kettle and Fireland, like this is we're thinking about the same thing, where we're creating free recipe books, free ebooks that incorporate bone broth and kind of educate. And that's because we don't have any engineering resources because we don't need that. It's not that type of company. Yeah. But we're using our resources to create a resource that didn't exist before. And engineering as marketing is basically just doing that. Okay,
cool. By the way, guys, if you have questions for any of these things, like please just unmute and interrupt. Okay. Viral marketing. This is something that I believe everybody, it's like kind of like the golden goose that everybody wants to grab onto. Mm-hmm. But it's also like very challenging to focus on, especially early on, because you don't have necessarily have like the base to like work with to help you go viral. Can you speak a little bit about like what viral marketing would be in context of like an early stage startup, or maybe just examples of viral marketing that you've seen work really well? Like, does viral marketing mean more like referral program type stuff, or does it mean more like Dollar Shave Club videos that go viral?
Yeah, so I mean, it can mean both, right? But I would consider viral marketing being wow, that was terrible. I would consider viral marketing
early.
Yeah, I'd say it falls much more in the bucket of referring people as opposed to a video going viral. Like I think Dollar Shave Club's video was really well executed content marketing, not necessarily a viral referral strategy. So what I would say there, yes, this channel works. It's really, really hard to do. And I think that it can work even if it's not your main channel, if that makes sense, you know? So basically we did this with Programming for Marketers, where if you go to programmingformarketers.com, enter your email, you sign up, you get a couple emails. So it's a free 10 email course on how to become a technical marketer. In a couple of those emails, including the first one, you'll get an email saying like, thanks so much for signing up. If you click here to refer a friend, we'll send you a free ebook. And so you click there, it pre-populates an email that you can then forward to a friend. It keeps bonus at Programming for Marketers BCC'd. And then once you send that, we send you a free ebook that we pull together. That type of stuff, as well as we had click to tweet, we had share on LinkedIn. Those types of referral loops, even though Programming for Marketers is not viral, we saw that we got about a 30% lift just from incorporating that type of action and those types of mechanics into our flow.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a good point that to some level, referral programs, just like getting your technical tags on for your SEO done correctly, is table stakes. Like if you have a product flow and there's a place to insert a call to action to get people to invite their friends, it makes sense to put that in there. Now, if you notice that is driving a significant portion of your business, then that means that might be a channel that you want to put into your inner circle so that you can really double down and optimize on it. So would you agree that the methodology here is anything that's in the inner circle are the things that you're doubling down on and you're trying to basically exhaust?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. How do you know, how do you check in your own head, like when a channel is essentially saturated or exhausted and you need to move on? Like,
you can kind of see it in the growth metrics. Like if your SEO is going like that, and then, or SEO is probably a bad one because that channel scales really well. If you're looking at, yeah, exactly. And you just see it kind of start to level off. That's when you know, okay, I should probably start looking at new channels, or look at seeing what can I do to improve my offer to lower my CPA, which will then mean, you know, I can keep spending in this channel.
Okay, cool. I have some questions from the audience, but the last question I want to ask, kind of like related to the different channels in the Bullseye framework, is related to targeting like blogs that are in your sphere. Have you done that with Kettle on Fire and with FOMO? And have you had any success with being able, as an early stage startup, getting a blogger to write about you before you have like kind of proven track record or success with that product?
Yeah. So how have I gotten people to write about it without a proven track record?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's effectively the situation I'm in Kettle on Fire, you know? And so basically we had to trade a lot of legitimacy, and we had to basically leverage other people. So we have an advisor that's well known in the space that we kind of borrowed his legitimacy. And it also helped that we have a product that people really like. It's really good, and it fills a big need in the space. So a lot of people are talking about bone broth. You can't really buy it online right now. And so that's kind of the need that we're filling. And so it wasn't actually that complex. It was more like, we're doing X, Y, and Z cool thing, you know, you guys should write about us or talk about us or mention that what we're doing is cool. And that was kind of it. You know what I mean? And for FOMO, that relied a lot more on my personal relationships, because people aren't really excited or interested in a new marketing tool.
Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. But the blogs, that was a successful channel for Kettle on Fire, you believe? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, awesome. For sure.
And that's also largely just outreach, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. Cool. So, Dion, I'm going to switch over to your questions. I just pasted them into chat. Do you want to actually ask these in context of, since they're your questions?
Yeah, sure. I think the one thing I've been struggling with, Justin, is figuring out how to balance things that are going to have sort of a discrete timeline attached to them, like an AdWords campaign or Facebook, versus investing in things that are going to have a longer payback, content, marketing strategies, or SEO. And so do you recommend that you have a balance at all times with those things, or go all in on one or the other at a certain point?
No, so I think it's very stage dependent. Like my thoughts around this are, if you're an early stage startup, you're effectively trying to grow as quickly as possible or get to a certain stage, like profitability, raise money, whatever your key metric is. It is important to invest in long-term channels at some point. I don't think you need to do it right away, because what it does is you don't see any return. It ends up being a distraction, and it pulls away from the stuff that is going to get you like really, really quick growth in the interim, you know? And so I think that though all of that stuff is important, I think it's totally fine to delay heavily investing in it by a year or so while you figure out, you know, can I raise money? Is this a product people want? Can I get to profitability? Whatever. So to give you an idea, sorry, do you want to?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
So to give you an idea with Kettle and Fire, SEO clearly can be a big channel for us. There was almost nothing when it was a 2-person team. You know, there was almost nothing that I could do super effectively in terms of SEO or that I even wanted to do. And so what we did is we spent a bunch of time figuring out like what other channels can we get to work, influencers, guest posts, stuff like that. And once that worked really well, we're like, okay, we're profitable, we're growing quickly. Now we have the resources to invest more in long-term channels where we don't need the immediate payoff. You know, I think once you're at that point where you have more resources than you need possibly for the whatever channel you're working on, that's when you can be really, really useful. And that's when you start focusing on longer-term payback channels. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. I'm just wondering, I think you said earlier about, you know, paying somebody to make sure technically you're set up properly. Are there any things that just because the timelines are so long that needs to bake that you need to just invest a little? I'm super early, so we went live in July with MVP. So I'm just trying to make sure that, you know, 6 months from now, I'm not regretting I missed something as I'm going through my experiments right now.
Yeah, so you'll always wish that you could get somewhere faster. I don't think that it will hurt you. Like if you start focusing on long-term channels 6 months later than possibly ideal, you're maybe 6 months behind. I don't really think that's true. But in the interim, you'll have focused really strongly on the part that kills most startups, which is like, do I have a product and that people actually want? And can I reach these people in some way? And for you, I think doing hand-to-hand combat, emailing a bunch of people, doing whatever channels you're considering, I think that will, one, teach you a lot more and get you a lot more customers than having done a bunch of SEO in the early days. Like there are millions of failed startups with really well architected websites, decent blogs with a couple blog posts, and some pages that attract SEO traffic. But it just doesn't matter, you know?
Awesome. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I second that too. It's like if you find something where you're getting signups and people are booking experiences like that, just put like everything, like just, you know, complete blinders on and just exploit that as fast as you can, because that's good for your business. And then, like, why focus on something that's unknown at that point, you know? Cool. So I'm going to ask Shakar to jump in and ask his question about marketplaces.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for doing this. So my question is regarding when you're researching traction, did you find there was anything different about growing marketplaces as opposed to like just growing a normal e-commerce store? Like how does traction differ in a marketplace setting? Yeah,
so I don't think that it shifts much. I think you just have to be more strategic with it. So in general, traction, like getting a marketplace off the ground is just hard. I think that what you should do is try and figure out where are the constraints, like on the demand or the supply side, and then you focus very, very heavily on that. So my buddy used to run growth at Lyft, and so he mentioned that what they did as a team is in the early days, they were like, let's get a bunch of people on the platform trying to request rides and whatnot. And then they realized they had so many requests, but not enough supply. And so they shifted their entire focus on how do we get drivers on the platform? And they just kind of went back and forth in this tug of war, but the entire time they kept growing. And so for you, I would think about how can I drive, how can I create the dynamics in the marketplace that I need to fulfill whatever the constraint is. Most companies, that constraint is demand, and so I would think about how do I generate demand, and maybe not even do a marketplace to start with. Just have one guy or 3 guys or whatever that will do this work on a contract basis, and I'll just throw demand in this way. Like, I think this is what Growth Geeks is trying to do in a sense, is they have a marketplace for growth marketers, but what happens there is they only have like 5 people per channel. So you can go on and just choose from one of the 5 people. After they go demand, I'm sure they'll build out the supply side a little more.
Makes sense. Yeah, it does. Single player mode. I think that's what Sean Ellis called it, single player mode. That's what he did with growth hackers at the beginning, at least.
Say that again?
So I was reading that Sean Ellis for growth hackers, what he did was something called single player mode, essentially, which is just like building out content for people to read, as opposed to like having people there initially just to converse. So first they can read, and then when they got more comfortable, start conversing with each other. So
cool. So basically, that's how I would approach that. Is just how can you satisfy it, and then only build up the supply side of the marketplace once there's more demand than you can handle.
So basically, work on the side that has less that's constrained, basically initially.
Yeah, and work on the side that kills most startups, which in most cases is demand. Okay. Without knowing anything about your company, I would guess demand is the biggest thing that you're worried about right now.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it is. Cool. Okay. Thanks, Jacker. There's another question from Arian, specifically about Kettle on Fire and Amazon. So the question is, you might not be able to answer the first part, which is what percentage of your sales are coming through Amazon? The second part is, can you share any effective strategies you have to improve rankings and reviews of your listings on Amazon? Arian is not selling bone broth either, so it's not a competitor. Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually made a really this hurt us in terms of Amazon. I'd never had a physical product before. I didn't realize how important Amazon was or would be. So we actually made a bunch of mistakes on Amazon. Most of the people selling our product on Amazon are not us. Most of them are people that bought wholesale and are jacking up the price and selling it, which is why we have a bunch of bad reviews. And like now we're having to combat that. So this is something that we're working on fixing right now. So I don't actually have a good answer on that.
Well, maybe what might be helpful is what would be the things if you have a product, what would be the things? What are some of the cautionary things to like watch out for to avoid that pitfall?
Yeah. So one thing, I would first start selling on Amazon on your own, like right off the bat.
Okay. So build your own store brand. Okay.
Yeah. And then secondly, I would create wholesale agreements where you have MSRP, which is like you can't sell the product below this price, and you say you can't sell on X, Y, and Z channel. And so then if you have a retailer or a wholesaler that buys products from you, puts them on Amazon, you can just sue them, buy them out, have them return your product, whatever. We didn't know any of this, and so like kind of invest a little bit, but we're figuring it out now.
Yeah, I had no idea about any of that either.
Yeah.
So I'm going to defer to Nathan from Backlot Cars. He has some questions that he posted. I'll let you ask them. Okay.
All right, great. All right, thanks, Justin. But yeah, we have a couple of questions. So we're at Backlot Cars, which is a wholesale automotive marketplace.
Okay.
Dealers sell to other dealers.
Okay.
So I guess our first question is so we have a kind of known profile of customers. Like they're essentially dealers that have used cars, and so we can acquire them with a sales channel. So how would you recommend we explore different traction channels?
So if you know that you can get them through the sales channel, why are you exploring other channels?
Well, I'd say one would be to lower the acquisition costs, and then two is just to help scale nationally.
Okay.
And two, maybe sales enablement, just helping some of those conversions.
Okay, so you can't profitably acquire people through the sales channel? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we can. So I think, we have probably like a lifetime value of about 6,000, and then we acquire for about 1,000 to 1,500 with sales.
So So that just sounds, to me, that sounds like a fundraising problem. Like I would just double down on the sales channel. And if you got that down to $1,000, you know, then maybe that's, maybe you're in an incredible space. Maybe you can like scale that, test different offers, test different approaches, test like phone calls versus text messages versus Slack bots versus like Facebook Messenger. Versus email. Like there's a ton of stuff that you could test within that. But I would almost 100% always recommend that you go with what's working and double down on what's already working rather than try and search for like a mythical content marketing unicorn with CPAs of like $40 or $4 or whatever it is, you know.
I guess one to like clarify on this question. So, I mean, there's a finite number of dealers in the United States, 120,000, but you know, I guess the question is, okay, obviously we can identify the dealers because like they want to sell to the retail consumers, but how do we, you know, sift through the 120,000 dealers and find maybe the 20% that are really, really interested in doing business in backlot cars? And then how do we grow that? Because we're growing region by region, not necessarily like on a national scale, sort of to like combat the supply and demand, like chicken and egg problem. So we grow tangentially into like nearby markets so that demand can obviously buy in for the existing supply and vice versa.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the question is, obviously we can go knock on doors all day long and we can do that from like 9 till 6 every day. But I guess one thing I'm curious on investing money in is like, what's a 24/7 marketing channel that, you know, can generate leads that, hey, these people may be more interested than these other people. So obviously let's focus our sales effort on like the hand raisers versus the people that, you know, will never have any intention on buying on backlot cars until we've closed all the auctions. And that's the only option. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So truthfully, I think sales can be one of those. Like, especially if you have a very target customer only in a specific region, only in, you know, with X, Y, or Z criteria, sales is generally a really good fit for that. I don't know that if you're knocking on doors, fantastic. Maybe look at how to switch that to outbound, or maybe look at hiring people to like put little notes under the door. I have no idea.
Yeah, but, we do both. Right.
Yeah, so I would think about that type of stuff. In terms of qualification, I mean, it almost to me, I feel like I'm missing something because it sounds like you're acquiring leads for less than you'll make from them over time. You know what regions to scale into. You have a sales process that's already working. Like that seems to be a really good place to be. And so like, what is the problem? Like you have too many leads. You need to qualify them. You need more leads or.
So right now, I mean, like through outbound sales, we can acquire like 100 new dealers a week, like just like with a snap. It's very, very easy. So it's getting them through and like getting them to the activation process to where, okay, yeah, we've signed you up now. Like, how do we have you make your bid and whatnot? So right now there's about an 80% churn on like new signups to activation, but like the 20% that we're retaining are just like absolutely addicted to the product, and the retention is very, very, very high. So it's like, okay, how do we go from an 80% churn off to, you know, 50%, which I would be happy because I'll invest all my money in sales, but I don't want to like churn out to 20% every single time.
Totally agree. So to me, got it. So to me, to answer your first one, I would advise you not to explore other traction channels, double down on sales. It sounds like it's not a traction channel problem and that you've figured out top of the funnel to some extent, but retention activation is the problem. And that will persist no matter what channel you explore, what other channels you go to. And so I would focus very heavily on activation and retention. One of the things I did at Airbrake, we had a very similar problem, but when I was running growth at Airbrake Exceptional, we had a similar problem. And basically anyone that signed up for a plan above a certain threshold, like over $100 a month, if they didn't activate, I had a little thing that would kick them an Amazon gift card for like $20. And it was just like, get on the phone with me for 15 minutes and I'll send you a $20 Amazon gift card. And basically our customer LTVs were so high when someone was activated, used the product. It was part of their development team's workflow. that $20 was just the best money we could ever spend. And these people are like, oh yeah, I want this thing on Amazon that I've been meaning to buy. Like I'll totally do that. And then we would just talk. I would figure out why they didn't sign up and then fix that problem, generally get them on board. And so that really, really, really helped. So for you guys, I would think about at only 100 people a week. I mean, if 80 of those are churning a week, what is that? That's like 14 conversations a day, 15, 16 conversations a day. 15 or 16 people are churning a day. Email all of them, like personally. That's enough that you could just personally email them, hop on the phone with the ones that reply, ask what's up, or run a survey as they're going through the process. Like I would figure that piece out because that seems to be the challenge that you guys have.
Right. And that was, I think the second question is, for activation, what channels would you recommend sort of testing out? Because we're like right now, obviously, I'm going to double down, triple down on sales, and we'll raise, Series A probably in January or February. But before we go do that, like the activation piece is like really dialing that in. That way we can, execute on the VC money like very effectively.
Yeah.
Not just burn a bunch of cash to burn a bunch of cash.
So I don't think so channels to me, when I think about traction channels, I think that's very top of funnel.
Okay.
I think that activation is very product, market, audience specific. And so I think that requires a lot of thinking about what is the pain point that I'm solving? What's the promise I'm making when people sign up versus what I'm actually delivering? How easy is it for them to get the first value? Like all of those are things I would be focused on, just laser focused on. And I think that a lot of it will involve talking to users, running surveys, running little chatbot widgets, pop-ups, stuff like that.
Cool. Thank you.
Those are all experiments that we should throw in your backlog. I really like the Amazon idea. That's just so simple. That's like another idea that's just like, oh, it's so simple to just talk to customers. So
yeah, dude, it worked really well. No,
Yeah.
very few people turn down free money.
Yeah, thank you.
Try to get 10 calls today.
I will.
Cool. Okay, so we have a question from Christy. Christy, do you want to unmute and jump in and just explain what Plan is?
Hi, Justin.
Hello.
Hi. Plan's a smartphone tool that is a productivity tool that sits alongside Instagram, and it allows users to visually plan their Instagram feeds by dragging and dropping media before they then post online.
Okay.
So it's acquisition heavy, basically. It's a one-off fee, where my USP is that it's a once-off fee for now while everyone else sits and does their subscription-based services, which is how I've been able to get there's been a bit of traction up front. So my main question has really been like, I'll get testimonials every day, I'll get compliments every day, but I just can't get my users to share it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still at MVP. I've been held up in dev because Instagram took away my API access the other day, which has been fun, but I just can't get my users to share it.
Got it. What have you tried?
I can't.
Why would they share it, actually? That's a better question.
Well, most of the traction channels that I'm going through, so the Facebook groups that I kind of hang out in and get people to on site at the moment, they're all social media managers, they're all bloggers that talk about blogging, they're creatives that run their own Facebook groups. They're kind of in that knowledge sharing space, and that's where I've been hitting really hard. So I just felt that it's a tool that is cheaper than anybody else, it's more visual than anybody else. Some people have picked up on it, but what I'm finding is that because of video content, people can't film their own phone with their phone because they don't have two phones.
Right. Right. So
struggling there.
So why would if you gave me this tool, why would I share it?
Because it's helpful to your audience.
And how are you communicating that's helpful to me?
Well, in the comms, it talks about how you look better online, that it saves you money and saves you time, and comparatively against other Instagram schedulers, mine's a one-off fee rather than $200 a year. So there's a few product benefits, but it's more visual. So I'm going down the route
What's
of
the tool called again?
It's called Plan. So PLANN. Yeah, Plan. So PLANN that.com.
Got it. Okay, cool. So, I mean, the basic thing, so two things. I mean, if it's something that people aren't sharing and you want people that use it to share the app with their friends, is that right?
Yeah, it's quite a social, like it's, the Instagram community is very, very social and they share a lot. So that the community that I'm going for, the people that they actually teach Instagram online. So the owner of the course will then share it to their thousands of users.
Mm-hmm.
And then those people that buy it will email me. They'll actually take the time to email me and thank me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll email them back and go, can you please share it? And then you just never hear from them. So
Got it. Okay.
Is there an incentive? Sorry, I was looking at another question, so I might have missed this. But is there an incentive for the sharing?
no, not yet.
Okay. Well, generally speaking, like if there's no incentive, like either for the advocate or for the friend, people really don't share
No.
unless it's like pictures of kittens or like a joke about Donald
Yeah.
Trump. Like there's like, well, you know, there's many types of virality. Like there's like, you know, 5 types supposedly, but I like to look at this as like implicit. And then there's like incentivized. So what you're talking about isn't like, if you add an incentive, I bet you it goes up like dramatically.
Definitely. So it's just looking at what that is, because in the app world, you can't. I haven't worked out yet. There's a way you can actually provide discount codes. You can. It's kind of hard to unlock products unless you can. I've seen that you can, if you sign up for an email list, that you can unlock products or unlock a feature. Or rate it, but I haven't seen anything about sharing will get you to unlock things.
Yeah, I mean, it could even be like, you know, free, like, you know, share this with your friend and both of you guys get a free course on how to effectively do something that's valued at $50. And you know the emails of the two people, right?
Yeah.
Justin talked about a tactic where he did that where when it said like share this now, it pre-populated an email just using a mail to link and then added like something at their course, like some email, a bonus at their course into the VCC so that they could then know the relationship between who was sharing. Or you can use a type form and pass this as a hidden variable. I can talk to you about how to do that. But basically, whatever the incentive is, the incentive for the friend has to be as good or better than the incentive for the advocate. Otherwise, the social benefit of sharing exceeds the cost, and then people don't want to be perceived as being spammy.
Yeah.
Cool. Good question. Anything else there or? Okay. So I have a question from Crystal, who couldn't be on the group today. She has a company called Greenhouse, which is a developer tool actually. So it's appropriate for you, Justin. So B2B SaaS, they sell to developers, CTOs, engineering managers, essentially a tool that helps them manage their builds better so that they can know who has which build. Do you have any, in your background experience, like any best practices when selling to engineers or any growth hacks related to how to market and how to do engineering marketing?
Yeah.
Question, sorry, but like just kind of broad strokes for her.
Yeah, so how to do engineering is to attract engineers with marketing. I think that the things that you've seen work really well are, well, one thing I would say, look at everything RunScope is doing in terms of marketing. RunScope and New Relic done such a good job of this. But the things that you see work really well are two in the developer tool space that I've seen. Outside of paid acquisition, which does work, takes a while to figure out, often very expensive. You see developer evangelism working very well. So creating your own meetup group, going to meetup groups, getting involved in community hackathons, talks, stuff like that works really well in this community, as well as building open source tools. I've seen that do exceptionally well. Like one of the things I did at Exceptional, we sponsored a lot of these tools. I also consulted for another company in the developer tool space that had raised $60 million. And one of the first things that I did is I went in and just bought up a bunch of free tools that their users were using, rebranded them, or didn't brand them as this company, but created like flows for, to sign up. And it was crazy. It basically like doubled signups in like 60 days. And it took some money, but it works. Like this community is very, very, very responsive to free online tools. And I've seen that work really, really well.
Okay, perfect. I like that idea a lot. Let me see. Are there any final questions from anybody? Speak now or forever hold your peace. If that's what it is, your voice. Okay, cool. Well, I guess this is fantastic. We'll end a couple minutes early. Respectful of everybody's time. Justin, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.
And I will record this and I'll share it with everybody. Okay.
Sounds great. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye bye.
See ya.
Thank you.